here comes Arapaho. Arapaho on the outside joins Smoke and Romans. They set two at the 200, but Arapaho under hands and heels went to the front, shown the whip 3/4 Smoke and Romans. They gap the others. Arapaho is pulling clear from Smoke and Romans, and Arapaho won the Zipping Classic.
This city desert makes you feel so cold. It's got so many people, but it's got no soul.
Overpass goes up, takes the lead, races away from them. Overpass drifts out to the middle of the course, shot 3 clear. Lady Laguna runs on, so does Hot Zed. It's Overpass down inside the last 100. He's nicely clear, all interest in the minors. Overpass, par for the course. Overpass, it's 4 for 4 at Ascot, wins another winner.
Another year and then you'd be happy. Just one more year and then you'd be happy. But you're crying now.
And now on PG Podcast Network, it's time for the year-round Carnival with Vince Accardi and your host, Racetrack Ralphy.
G'day, thanks for tuning in to Year-Round Carnival. Each and every Monday we look at the best racing wherever it is in Australia, usually Melbourne and Sydney, but on Saturday it was in Perth and dominating, of course, hence Baker Street, the Kiwi based in Sydney, winning at Caulfield and at Ascot. Bjorn Baker, what a star he is, Vince. Morning, mate.
Good morning, Ralphy. Well, he's proven he doesn't take many over there, but when he takes them, as you know, and overpasses his crown jewel, that just keeps on winning.
Absolutely.
He's just got the formula.
Arapaho won the Zipping Classic on Saturday, and we take requests. And Scott, one of our great supporters, Vince, he's a part owner of Arapaho. He suggested we play Baker Street off the top, and so good on you,
nice,
Scott.
Nice.
He'd be absolutely delighted. So obviously, though, the Group 1 was at Ascot. Firstly, how'd the track play? It looked pretty quick on the TV.
Well, it was much better than the week before. First of all, love it when I see that winners all started from lanes 10.
Yep.
Not that wide, though, only out to 15. And the reality was very, very few horses, only a couple where you were hard on the lead pack could win. They were all midfielders, backmarkers. So I thought that was really interesting.
The win was in play, I believe. Is that right? I think I heard someone say.
Well, the win can be in play, but the reality is when you look at the setup, with the exception of race 1, the majority all come inside that 6-length band.
Yep.
At the 800.
Well, Overpass, as we said, 4 from 4 in Ascot, as has been well documented. It's almost like a superimpose of many years ago, the double-double, as they used to say. So it's won the Cocker twice, it's won the Win and Bottom twice. Last year it won it off an unusually soft tempo. How'd they go on Saturday?
Yeah, I thought this was the impressive part, Ralphie. 5.5 lengths above benchmark was the early speed. Overpass going +5, so really tested. And, you know, when it's high pressure, Ralphie, you look at that midline run, Overpass still travelling 4.9 above. I mean, that's hot. I mean, the leaders finished last. Well, if you want to call him the leader, there was only half length between them, but it's finished last. That's how heavy the pressure was. That's Bravo Centurion. Ended up going -15 last 400 after matching the mid-race move with Overpass, both going 4.9 above. And Overpass only went 1.3 below benchmark last 400.
Yeah, we spoke about Bravo Centurion. The market got it right. 11's out to $16. It's a short course specialist, but yeah, did show the high heat. So
It did.
The fact that Josh is able to just judge it so well, and this occasion from a wide barrier, and just let the horse do what he wanted to do. You took the view on Friday on our preview podcast, and as did the market. I'm not saying that it was like we found 101 shot, but
no.
But the point being that from Flemington, there's every chance he was flat, because first up he was really big, and in fact, I remember talking about this with you on the members bonus, Vince, that this was unusual in that when he won at Randwick, it was the race before the Everest, and it was actually a faster raw time.
Yeah, it was. And the beauty was how good's Bjorn as well in terms of what he felt was going to be necessary in terms of preparational readiness for Overpass for this race in WA, because obviously he planned it from the year before, Ralphie.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a masterstroke. The biggest, upside for me was unbelievable what Overpass was able to do through the first two sections of the race. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do. Plus 9.9 first 2/3 of the race. In other words, from the gates to the 400-metre mark, that the horse has gone a combined plus 9.9. I just thought that was massive.
Gee, that is really fast. So, and particularly if you're listening to this and you're just trying to sort of learn the fundamentals of what Vince does via daily sectionals, plus 5 lengths, or the leader, let's say Bravo Centurion, 5.6 lengths above benchmark first 400 off a standing start. And what do you got here? 2,063 Ascot 1,200 races. That's a pretty deep benchmarking system there. That is an explosion. You would rarely see in anywhere, any race, that type of speed early.
Well, this is it, Ralphy, because when you combine the first 2/3 of the race, saying that you've virtually gone 2 seconds faster than the average, it's pretty impressive for a 6-year-old, and then just how well composed the horse was all the way to the finish line. No one's ever going to get near it. And I love the fact that he stayed in the line. So I just said, too good.
He won a Cocker, I reckon, earlier this year, doing exactly the same thing, just drifting out into the best part of the track. And a big shout out to everyone who thinks it's only about closing speed. 78th best last 200 of the day for pass. So he was spent, and all bar one, which we'll get to, was completely shot trying to chase him or too far out of their ground.
Yeah. What do you think of the second horse's performance, Ralphie?
Well, I often say I'll find the Tasmanian Tiger before I find the G Beggs table, but gee, they're good at targeting one, and how unlucky was this horse now? What's the difference? 0.8 of a length? It's hard not to think that and they don't pay a lot, the shoulda ones, but maybe this horse should have won.
Well, you got to look at it like this. Number one, 0.4 below benchmark. You could never have scripted it any better than that. As we touched on at the start, Ralphie, the majority of all winners came midfield back.
Yep.
And where you had to be was pretty much 6 lengths or inside that from the 800-metre mark. And so I felt, from a ride point of view, that first section was just magnificent.
So hang on, sorry to butt in. I'll interrupt you there, because so he was there was a bit of a complaint that there was a call out that he was being held, and so he's a bit sticky away. But you're actually saying that's done him a favour,
big time,
right?
Absolutely, okay. Big time. Because you just look at the setup of the day, not just this race. I looked at the whole day.
Yes,
and when you have 7 from 9 races that are midfield back, and the majority of them coming pretty much from that 4 to 6 lengths range, you know that's a sweet spot. Now, we've always said it, when it's fast-paced, where do you want to be? 3 to 6 lengths from the leader.
Yep.
Of course, had they gone through that first section, let's say 2 or 3 lengths faster again, which that can happen, then that tends to help the leaders more and makes it harder for the off-pace runner, because the surge in the min-races just becomes horrific for a lot of them. But
so on this occasion, Harbour's picked up.
Yep. And you can see what's happened over that last 400 in particular. I love the way it just stormed home with a plus 4.7. Pretty much that last 400 metres was like, you could not have got that any better either, Ralphie. Yes, between the 6 and the 4, you've got to see this is where part of the impact come into play when you're talking about the wins. And the impact of that was there, it was visible. But ultimately, when I look at the MPS margin, Ralph, it sort of says there was still half length in favour of Overpass.
So, and you can often get caught up in this. What you're saying is the visuals can say, wow, you're so unlucky, but really, all honours the winner, full stop.
Yeah, because if that also had gone, let's say it jumped cleanly with them and it's going 2-3 lengths faster, that doesn't mean all of a sudden that horse is going to have that tremendous close still. You can see that those horses hard up on the speed all had massive deterioration. And I felt it was largely to do with the intensity in the mid-race.
When a horse like Hot Zed runs third, now he's a pretty consistent old horse, and he's what did he do? He was beaten 3.5 lengths in this race last year. He was beaten 1.4 lengths the year before. So they keep setting him, and he's always going to be struggling to win. But he's ran such a cracking race. Is this the case that when a horse gets the perfect run in a outlier race shape, that's how they can run places at big odds in these type of races?
Well, they can, and as you've touched on, I mean, you look at this horse's profile, he's very capable of running in the twos range. I
Yep.
mean, just got to go back to April last year, plus 2.7. So,
Yes.
and this particular trainer, I'm a big believer. This is just it's just my view, right? I feel this trainer lets the horses get fit. So, again, I'm just sitting back saying, pretty solid performance from this horse. First up, 3.6 lengths below benchmark, and then turns up second up. This is off a decent break and was able to produce that sort of performance. I just sort of have to sit there and say they've got this horse like, I would almost start tagging this horse could be airborne. So we're going to watch him, Ralphie, if he turns up in the next couple of weeks, while we're doing these podcasts on a Friday, and we're going to take, a very close eye on who is it against. This is ready
we've
to
still
win.
got the Gold Rush to come in 2 weeks' time, which I dare say Mahaba will be going as well. Over 1,400 metres, that'll be real interesting. And a couple of different form runners. So rope them in probably similarly. You said he was a horse on the rise, but really probably that Blinkers first time last start that might have said that's what you can do, and that's probably his level again.
Yeah, and here's the crazy thing, Ralphie. When you going about a length faster than Mahaba overall, if we look at that, then perhaps if we were transferring that energy over the last 400, his close would have been maybe a length stronger. So it did sort of give me the confidence that Rope Them In can handle this distance. Probably that setup just a little bit too intense for him through the first 2 split times, and just show that he was probably a length off someone like, say, a Mahaba. I would say probably a little bit further than that behind Overpass at the moment, but that was just full of merit.
So I mentioned the Gold Rush in 2 weeks' time. I'm just looking at the markets. Vince, you always say about some of the pointless odds that are put up at the moment. Western Empire $4, Lady Laguna $4.50. Well, you wouldn't want to probably be on them at face value, but then let's peel it apart. Lady Laguna, the truckload came for it, $4.50 into $4 with J-Mac. I would say that this is a case that barrier 1 can often be a negative in a big race, because J-Mac was not going to be buried, 3-4 back the fence, but if he was drawn midfield, he would have thought, there I am in the perfect spot. So what type of pressure was he forced to put her under from that barrier 1 position?
Well, 4.2 through the first section above the standard, and then 4.5 in the mid. High intensity, when I look at this horse's history, there was that run at Rosehill 2 starts back, over 1,300, where we put in a high-powered first 2 sections. So there was a little bit of that. And the horse couldn't quite cope. I feel this horse is always at best when it can just breathe through the first 2 sections. And what I mean breathe, not at a slow pace, but at an intensity that's probably 2 to 3 lengths softer than that. And you could see the horse, I would say, again, I'm just going off the top of my head now because I haven't watched the replay again, but I'd say somewhere near the 150, 200 metre mark, done.
Yes. So for instance, to compare apples to apples, when she won the Gold Coast Magic Millions and J-Mac Road, she was drawn barrier 10 of 15 runners. He sat midfield on her. So what type of pressure was she doing the first 2 sections? Again, bearing in mind on Saturday, 8.7 lengths above benchmark combined first 2 sections.
Yeah, so you're talking about the run, back in January?
Yes.
Yeah, so that one there, if you look at the combine, it was 6.6 lengths below versus almost 9 lengths above.
Oh, wow. So there's 14 lengths difference. And that's purely because of the barriers. Because as I said, there's no way known if he was drawn a midfield barrier, he would have hunted her up. But, it made perfect sense to, because he's not going to jump on the plane and go to Perth and just die wondering.
No. He knew he had a good horse, just a little bit too much. But that probably, I'm just assuming, is that horse going to that race at 1,400, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can't help but feel that I've been saying it to myself for a little while that I reckon Lady Laguna is going to be at her best at 14, right? But it's who's the competition? It's going to be it's going to be tough. It's not going to be no easy race to win. But this just sort of franks that they've got Lady Laguna in top shape, Ralphie, and this would have just rounded her off immaculately, even though they probably didn't get the desired outcome, the victory.
Ditto Western Empire. Now, you went cold on him on Saturday,
Yep.
and the 2 week back up there, staying at 1,200, and we had that chat. We said, well, is there something else? And yep, that's the Gold Rush. So he's completely eased. Willie Pike afterwards was disappointed, but if Team Williams brought this horse into the stable with the Gold Rush as the grand final, it's not a negative, is it?
Nah, disappointed. Okay. It won't be as disappointed in 2 weeks' time, I'm assuming. Again, we've got to look at the competition, but that performance was on point though. Half a length above benchmark early. That's a nice, solid pace, Ralphie, for this horse. Staying at 1,200 metres. 3.1, not like over the top extension in the middle. You can see the horse is breathing. And then the letdown, last 400, 0.7 above. No super ferocity. A few reasons, and we touched on that, the backup, staying at the 1,200, all negatives. This does set the horse up, in terms of rounding it off and be ready for a peak performance. It's coming.
Right. Okay. So I tell you what, those jockey interviews are hilarious in Perth because most jockeys will give real detailed answers. Willie Pike doesn't bother because he's Willie Pike. He doesn't need to.
No.
So he just says whatever he feels like saying, and it wasn't much on Saturday. Fair to say. Let's have a look at a few of the other races. Firstly, Generosity. Now, we try and give the best information we can at our members bonus podcast because we don't have a show without our fantastic support from our members, and our Group 1 members most weeks get a bonus podcast. This is what we said about Generosity from 2 weeks earlier. Generosity, was it asked to do a bit too much?
Oh, what happened to that? I don't think that rider fell asleep. Well, look at it. 3.6 lengths below benchmarks the lead speed. The horses run second, the boss lady's 8.6 below. And Generosity's running 11.3 below. What are you doing out the back, right? It gave the field a massive head start. And then you just want to frank it all, Ralph. You look at that last 400 metres, plus 9.5. It was a jet. The way it finished, I go, man, who's this horse? It was a jet. Because I was actually timing that particular meeting. I was working it live and I was going, unbelievable run. But I hope they get the tactics to be better at moving forward. You're not going to win races if you're trying to spot that lead pack 10 lengths and you're going so slow.
All right, Vince, she couldn't have done more. The feeling at the time was it a 1,400 race that's needed? But by Friday and then Saturday on our preview podcast, she said it wasn't 1,400. She just needed a sprint race of tempo, and she was going to get it. Did she get it?
Yeah, she did get it, Ralphie. First of all, leader, it's gone 2.5 above, which is a really great pace. It's not too, onerous up the front. And I love the fact when there's no slackening in the middle, 4.7 above the leader was going. This is bopping blue, ensuring that the whole field had to put a good level of pressure. And you look at Generosity, 1.4 lengths below benchmark first section, magnificent position to be in, almost 4 lengths off the leader. When the move came in the middle, this horse, I felt even though it wasn't over the top in terms of some of the other runners, but it was in line with what you should do. 4.2 above. I felt that the ride was perfect there, Ralphie. And then let it all down for the last 400 metres. It was magnificent. Plus 3.9. This horse is still climbing.
What do we make of the odds on Joker's Grin? And as I said, on the Friday and Saturday, and you can listen back. You can always listen back to our preview podcast. We always put them up on the Monday, win, lose or draw, so you can listen back there. And this week we're going to have a look at the Northerly, the third of the big Group 1 or the big races. They're not all necessarily Group 1s at Perth. So if you want to get our preview podcast, racetrackralphy.com.au, go click through the links, get the preview podcast there. Of course, if you're an existing daily sectionals customer getting the race speed profiles, there's an audio only top up option there. But what do you make of Joker's Grin trying the 1,200 for the first time?
Yeah, well, first of all, the price that the horse was at was really interesting. But when I look at number one, the speed that it travelled up through the first section, 0.8 below, that's a good pace for this horse. Better than when it had its first attempt at Belmont at 1,200, where it went plus 1.2 and completely fell in a hole. But what was really evident, Ralphie, here, was soon as it had to put the big energy in the mid-race, because the position in running was magnificent. Like, if you were going to make that transition and you had the capability, that's where you want it to be, somewhere around a length off the, or a length below benchmark, 3.5 off the leader. The move in the middle probably opened up a little bit of the kryptonite against the horse, where it had to go 4.4 above, and that finish was not there. This illusion that because you're storming home just automatically means you're going to love the 1200 or a longer distance. You could see it only had 2.2 lengths above benchmark last 400, but more importantly, it peaked at the 200 with a plus 2.5. Now, maybe slight overreaction by the rider. He probably thought he was home and just give it that big burst of energy and not doing, let's say, a Nash type strategy where, hang on, I better leave something a little bit late, right? And it was 0.3 below benchmark. So it just fell off a cliff. So I'm looking at the signal that it will run 1200, but not in this type of setup. It has to have a softer pace early or no overextension in the middle. Good run, though.
So real coiled spring type setup.
Yep.
All right, well, a couple others that we'll save for our members bonus podcast. If you want to become a member, click through the links, racetrackralphy.com.au via the bonus podcast, and each week you get best of the day sent to you when you're a member. Because you mentioned the word Nash, let's go to Rosehill. And how did the old Warrior Private Eye manage to get back on the winners list here with Nash for cash back on?
Did you love that?
and full credit to the call too. It added to the theatre of it all.
Well, I'd say there's a few things here, right? Firstly, we've seen the Private Eye. They've experimented a few times in this campaign where they've made this strategy about being forward. But what was the bigger plus? The drop down in grade, like genuinely coming right back. I would say a couple of pegs, right?
Yep.
Made a massive difference. And probably the other factor that was massive as well, the state of the track, right? Given where it was, going 1.5 lengths below benchmark first section, but then in the middle, 7.7 lengths below benchmark. Now, this is not because the rider's brutally slowing them down. Yes, there is a little bit of that because it's not totally the track doing it, but the reality is I would give probably 5 lengths of it to ground condition and only a couple of lengths to the slowing of the horse, which then allowed for a bit of a finish in the home straight, and it was plus 1.7. But the bigger thing was the grade. I just felt that this was a massive drop in the grade, and the final figures clearly point that out. 2.1 above the standard at the IVR benchmark. Robusto, we know this horse pretty well, Ralphy, 0.7 below. And mind you, Robusto is an interesting sort of horse about like what ground it likes best. And I wouldn't be saying that the wet ground's its best ground.
You wouldn't?
No, not necessarily. But it's the grade, right?
Yeah.
You have a look at the competition.
What about position in running, Vince? So at Newcastle, they completely conceded. At Randwick and the Everest, no knock on Jay Ford rather at all. In the Everest, he was hunting him up, trying to get him a position. So he was struggling to get his position there. They weren't for an Everest going overly quick. They were going a brutal pace at Rosehill, and then they went back at Newcastle. But was there a degree of flatness, because that Rosehill run was a seriously fast race won by Bella Nipotina and Sunshine in Paris, who then went up the straight to Flemington.
Oh, 100%, Ralphie. What you said there is spot on. +7 first section, 3.6 in the mid at Rosehill, and then you can just see it. No speed there, Ralphie. 4.1 below benchmark, 3.9 in the middle. So going that soft, you still couldn't produce like a much superior overall first two sections. But what was really positive was a very solid last 400. And this is typical of when you see horses that are flattened. They can't generate the speed early, but they can then finish very strongly. And I actually feel that was, in my view, that run at Newcastle very intelligent, because maybe if they had really pressured the horse would have, responded, but they could have just, completely finished the horse that campaign. Instead, they got another run.
Well, interestingly, he's in the nominations for that Gold Rush that we spoke about in Perth. So I don't know if Joe's going to put him on the plane, but
really, Joe might do that.
Yeah, be very interesting if he goes over because
Wow.
that's probably
Okay.
his exact grade at this stage of his career. You'd suggest.
That would be very interesting. But the good thing is, it would just create more value in the market, wouldn't it?
It definitely will, of course. Like
Yep.
that's
Yep.
running. Gee, I was nearly set to play the bonus podcast though, Vince, because Robusto. I pulled that out at Hawkesbury and we gave it a huge push because its run was amazing at Hawkesbury, and it was a hidden run due to its monster mid-race move. In this occasion, you got to say it was covering a bit of ground, but good on what Oda costed. It wasn't trying to ask to do the impossible from midfield. And as you said, if you're not really handling the ground, he might run a cheeky race in the Ingham.
Well, I have no doubt they definitely got the horse like spot on. The only view I have is maybe that run at Rangwood a couple of starts back does demonstrate that the horse is maybe set to run somewhere in the mid ones. Because when you look at that last run at Hawkesbury, like you said, Ralphie, I mean, those last two splits, 8.4 above and 8.7, they were unbelievable, right? Unbelievable. That's off an 18-length mid-race squeeze. So they definitely got the horse right.
Gave us a shout at $21 on Saturday anyway. One run of the way I'm going to pull out from a members bonus podcast was 2 weeks ago. This is what we had a little bit of a chat about a best of the night win at Canterbury. And I'm working on Caulfield, and I look up, and I thought, what is this winner at Canterbury? So I'm doing my write-up on the Fridays, and I just looked at it, this looked pretty good. And now your numbers have come through. Race 6 at Canterbury, benchmark 78. This will be winning Sunday races, won't it? Eye of the Fire, second prep, first up.
Oh, do you like that?
Wow.
How stunning was this, Ralphie? I'd say borderline too far back.
Yep.
For Canterbury, 1100, right? You're spotting the leaders just over 6 lengths. Now, for me, when you're in an 1100 metre race, the way the photography of the track is at Canterbury, it's a bit much of a head start. You realistically want it to be where the second horse was, right?
Yeah.
But then I looked at what the horse did in the mid-race. A 11.3 length mid-race squeeze, right? At 1100 metres, usually it's never followed up with a booming last 400 at plus 7.6. Generally speaking, they do half that, right? Which is pretty much in line with what the rest did. And this horse is, on fire.
The Fire out wide is charging. It's Flying Destiny, joined by Eye of the Fire. Eye of the Fire's coming over the top. Eye of the Fire wins from Flying Destiny.
Eye of the Fire, Vince. It was super at Canterbury, and it's gone on with it on Saturday.
Yeah, not bad either, Ralphie. When you look at it, 5.3 lengths below benchmark first section. Mind you, the lead speed was virtually half a length below benchmark. So when you look at where this horse is positioned for a 1100 metre race, you're obviously going to have to do a bit of work in the mid race, and it did. It went 0.4 above. Only 2 horses broke benchmark in that particular race, and then last 400 metres, bit of a drop off, but I just felt it was more of a slowing, because when I then looked at the last 200 metres, the horse actually rebounded from 2.1 below to 1.4 below. It's not a bad effort. Third best of the day, 0.2 above, still trending, Ralphie.
All right, we'll round off where we started with the Beyond Baker team and Arapaho winning the Zipping Classic on Saturday at Caulfield. Just before we ask about that race in specifically, Vince, how wet was that track on Saturday?
How wet was it? Well, firstly, if we look to the 800 metres, there was a couple of races there where there was a bit of intensity and pace. But if I take that away, Ralphie, we basically had an average mean of around 7 lengths below standard to the 800. And then all the way to the 4, there was like virtually 1.8 below to the 6, and then 3.6 last that 400 metre split. The area that's always been affected, but it was definitely, in my view, very wet, Ralphie, especially those first 3 sections. The last 400 metres, I thought was excellent. The ground, it was probably S5 worst case scenario.
Well, that's where the best drainage is, so that all adds up there. In the Zipping Classic, Vince, you spoke about the class drop with Private Eye up in Sydney. Well, how's Arapaho? It's leading odds were $151, $51, and $67. But of course, $67 against Via Sistina. So
Yeah.
then it's got its right race there. I thought this was such an outstanding ride by Rachel King. They announced change of tactics. Well, so it's gone more forward. It's 3 back the fence. Wouldn't think it was going overly quick.
No, are they going to take this horse to Western Australia?
I don't know. Don't think so. Don't think there's a
Oh,
race for
okay.
it. No, I couldn't say
Or is that
I think,
later?
I think that would be it, and they would freshen it for the Sydney Carnival.
Yeah, because I just feel like Bjorn has only just got this horse going.
Yeah, so an 8-year-old, and he had to miss a fair bit of racing after that BMW win, but now he's got the mouthguard back in.
Well, you think about it. Best of the day.
Yep.
Ralphy. 0.3 above. That's pretty good. Coming off 11.6 early speed, finishing off that last 800 metres, I felt, really good style. Broke benchmark between the 4 and the 2. Didn't quite break benchmark over the last 200 metres, but from an overall performance, I actually reckon next start this horse is probably going to peak.
Wow, so it's going but I'll tell you what, particularly with older horses, you send them to the paddock happy, they generally come back very well too.
Yeah, well, they'd be very happy, and they've just got to keep it in the right nick.
Yep, absolutely. All right, that concludes our full podcast. Our members bonus will couple other little nuggets that I've found from elsewhere that I'll ask Vince about. But in the meantime, thanks so much for tuning in to our year-round Carnival podcast. If you want to get our preview, like I said, of Northerly Day this week at Ascot, racetrackralphy.com.au. Click through the links there for our preview podcast. Thanks for listening to Year-Round Carnival.